da ne vidimo. Prošlo je dalje.
Čuo sam.
Ne, sve je jedno i drugo bilo.
Respected Commissioner Marinovic, Your Excellency Mr. Bratum, respected Mrs. Nordic-Stranzer, Mrs. Chuk, Deputy Unkovic, respected colleagues and friends, today on 28th of January, the Commissioner traditionally is commemorating the Day of Personal Data Protection. Unfortunately, in this case, we are commemorating this day in the conditions with the corona pandemics, and I'm hoping this is the last time we celebrate this day with COVID-19. The status of the personal data protection is the subject of today's conference, and today you will have the opportunity to hear what is the understanding of these legislative frameworks and how we are protecting these rights, and we will point out to the specific traits that marked last year. The one was an attempt to organize this area by adopting the strategy of personal data protection that will define all the key players in this area, and on the other hand, the one huge step forward that we are making in the area of education, informing the public of the importance of this right, how to protect and value this right. More about this our speakers today will tell us. The first speaker is the Commissioner for Personal Data Protection and Public of Information of Public Importance, Mr. Milan Marinkovic. Please, Marco.
It is a pleasure for us to see you in these big numbers, although the pandemic is still on. It is my pleasure also to see you at this occasion, particularly to greet our dear guests, Mr. Brate, Mr. Notistarcer, Mrs. Chuk, dear friends. Here again we are together traditionally to mark this day of protection of personal data, this time in a new environment thanks to the old facility that is being renovated. Now we have the honor to do marking or observation of this date in these beautiful facilities of the Assembly of Belgrade. And I thank the Belgrade, town of Belgrade, city of Belgrade management for enabling us to speak here and to have our discussions here. I am lucky that since 2021, I have a deputy, and by nature of things, I have passed a part of my obligations to her. So she will talk a little bit more about one segment, and I will talk about the other segment. Namely, 2 days ago, it was 2.5 years or 300 days since I'm in this position of the Commissioner for Protection of Personal Data and Information, Public Information. It was a very turbulent period. Nobody expected the state of emergency and the pandemics, so there were so many challenges that appeared unexpectedly, something that has not been happening for decades, to protect certain data, a matter to which not so much attention has been paid. On the other hand, due to these new circumstances, other things have happened that I will talk about. As far as our service is concerned, I believe and I'm convinced that we have responded in a proper way to these challenges. I haven't heard criticism about this, and it is good regarding access to public information and protection of personal data. In none of the two I have heard too many critics. So 30 or 40 years ago, I was first reading a book, and then I read the Orwell's book, 1984. It was science fiction. Some other films that I have seen later, that were filmed later, and also some novels were written, and all of us thought that it is something that will never come, really, that we will not see it in our lifetime. And we thought that we will never be in situation to have these challenges and to ask ourselves what to do next. But very soon, within the lifespan of one generation, we came to this situation where we are living a life from what used to be science fiction. Science fiction has become reality. We are living a life within the environment of a big brother, a life of accelerated digitalizations and development of artificial intelligence, robotization, and similar. Unfortunately, Terminator is not anymore a character from books and screens. There are many terminators in the world of today, those who deal with our data, who, artificial intelligence that is doing that, bringing some good things, but also many bad things. We have a situation, unfortunately, that the predator is not a character from science fiction. We have internet predators that appear and that jeopardize those that are most vulnerable, like children, youth, those who are not so efficient in using internet, but are not so proficient in using it. So there are many challenges, much bigger than what we used to have 12 years ago, when the application of the previous law on protection of personal data started. And it was within the area, it was like a kindergarten as compared to what we are facing today. Today we have big responsibility. The big responsibility on government structure, those who deal with protection of personal data, and the biggest responsibility is at the office of the commissioner, and to follow the application of this law and also to do the inspections and to bear responsibility. So his or my responsibility as a commissioner, we are trying to strengthen our capacities. Just as an illustration, when I started on this job, there were 94 positions, working positions, when I started, and now we have received many new responsibilities, and now we have 129 working position, and now we have more responsibilities, even more, so that the number of staff and the manner of work, organization of work, have to be changed drastically in future. I have to put some personal note in this. When I was elected as a commissioner, they thought that in a way I will decrease the importance of this institution, of this state organ, and that it will lose the importance that it used to have up to that moment. But with that, they didn't understand the things, because the increase of institution is getting bigger and bigger, and I'm happy to state that, although someone who's at the head of certain organ normally should not say that he's happy to have more work, but I am happy that I have more work. But I count with the support of all of you, all structures, all organs that can help us to increase our capacities and to enter into this battle called how to protect personal data in 21st and in future centuries, in spite of such big challenges that we have ahead of us in this new age. One of challenges is to form as many people as possible. Sanja will talk more about that, but I will say something that we have started doing, and we have in fact finalized it on 21st, and we are continuing expanding that segment. It is participation in short programs of studies in cooperation with faculties, university in the Republic of Serbia, whereby we are trying to produce as many qualified staff that in this area is really missing, and they will be our big help, not only to us but also to citizens when we process the data and try to protect them. So it is a pleasure for me in this first short program that we started in 21, and we finalized with the security faculty, and the other short program should start soon that we agreed will Kragujevac University Law School. We are talking about it, and we are trying also to establish the same thing in Novi Sad. So we are trying not only in Belgrade but throughout Serbia to train as many as possible experts, because we need these experts. The person who is introduced into the law and into the decree or directive that exists in the European Union, the importance of that person is not so well understood. I invite everybody who doesn't have such a person responsible for personal data in different institutions. I invite them, those who have defined that person and who will in future, should define which characteristics that person should possess in order to protect the personal rights in the best possible way. I wouldn't go further into this. I thank everybody for your attention, all guests that are here and that have showed that they respect the protection process of personal data and of citizens of this country. And I hope and I am sure that next year I will be able to present the results that will be even better of this institution, of the Commissioner in this area. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marinovic. Before I give the floor to our following speaker, I want to say two things. First, I want to apologize because I made a mistake when I presented our speakers, and with a desire to have live gatherings. But today we will have online addressing by the Mrs. Susan Fritz, the director of the USAID in Serbia. Secondly, what I want to point out, speaking about the digital age we are in, that people who want to address us over Twitter, they have hashtag Privatnost 2022. When we are talking about next speakers, I have to point out that Commissioner has a long-term cooperation with the mission of OSCE in Serbia, and the support of the implementation of the project that is supporting our institution is reflected in many activities. I want to point a few of them that are important for the work of our institution, where we have the support of OSCE. When we are talking about strategy and the intentions of harmonizing with the legislation, we have drafted an analysis of the harmonization of the regulations of the security sector, the law that is regulating the area of police, military, private security, with the current law of the personal data protection, which is a very good proposition for harmonizing these legislations. The mission of OSCE helped us in raising awareness of the public. We received public surveys that pointed out the opinions of the public on this area. And the mission is helping us in publishing short videos that will explain closer the rights of the personal data to the general public. It is my great pleasure and honor to greet Mr. Jan Bratu, His Excellency, the Director of the Mission of OSCE in Serbia. Mr. Bratu.
Very kind introduction, very informative introduction. Yes, we are very much engaged together with you and your colleagues, and we will continue to be so. But let me begin. Dear Commissioner Marinovic, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to address you at today's event, and I'm also glad that we're able to do it despite the challenges that are posed by the current COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic. I'd also like to use this opportunity to congratulate the Commissioner and his team for their commitment and very thorough work in developing and promoting the important right to personal data protection. As the Commissioner stated in his introduction, this is work of increasing importance, not the least due to technological development, and we must all be aware of the importance of protecting personal data as a fundamental human right. This is becoming more and more important. The OSCE strongly supports initiatives of constructive and inclusive dialogue that lead to more secure societies. The principle applies in particular to the right of personal data protection. Privacy is a fundamental human right, and it's recognized as such in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and in many other international and regional treaties and conventions, not the least the Council of Europe's Convention 108. and also within the OSCE context. There are many documents that recognize the right to personal privacy and encourage participating states, as we call them in the OSCE, to share information and expertise and cooperate with individuals, groups, and organizations, including on the access to information and the protection of privacy. In this context, we work in very close cooperation with all our partners, organizations, and institutions, while promoting, of course, what we call domestic ownership of reform achievements. And the Republic of Serbia is making achievements in this sector. The International Data Protection Day is marked globally, promoting the right to privacy. Indeed, the right to personal data protection and the right to privacy are among the fundamental values shared by the OSCE 57 participating states. And the OSCE has a comprehensive approach to security. We see the respect for human rights as a precondition for human security at all levels, and this includes, as I mentioned, the right to personal and private data protection. Now, your law on personal data protection is a solid foundation, but it is not and it should not be seen as the ceiling in the protection of citizens' rights. All of those dealing with citizens' private data should diligently comply with the law, of course, as a minimum, but should also feel encouraged to go beyond and take further affirmative actions to better protect the privacy of all citizens. The latest annual report of the Commissioner underlined a need for further harmonization of many other laws and legal acts regulating private data protection in various sectors. And the report particularly points out the necessity for a more systematic approach by all relevant participants in protecting private data. And I believe that Commissioner Matovic referred to this in his introductory speech. This should be formulated within the framework of a comprehensive state strategy for private data protection, as well as an action plan for its implementation. We at the OSCE are very glad to see the intensified work on the new strategy for data protection in 2021, and that the government of the Republic of Serbia has established a working group where Commissioner Marinovic and his team are involved. We trust that the group will continue its commitment to formulating a new strategy and underpin this strategy with a very sustainable and achievable action plan. I would also like to commend the Commissioner and his team for their efforts to increase awareness about the 2019 data protection law. Awareness in various state institutions and among the general public could be improved, as we have seen from the report that was referred to by I think Mr. Marko in his introduction. We need to do more to inform the general public and institutions about the 2019 data protection law and to target data handlers or those dealing with public data and private data through education programs. We in the OSCE support various ways to secure a systematic educational approach and to initiate cooperation with education institutions as well as such facilities as primary, secondary schools and universities for the sustainability of such efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, the protection of the right to personal data protection is an enormous challenge in today's world, where global technological developments have made vast amounts of personal data available online. Personal data have become one of the key resources, indeed, of modern economies, but not without problems. The regulatory framework must ensure an adequate level of protection of personal data for citizens using digital platforms. Surveillance technology also poses the challenge which needs to be regulated properly, with systematic guarantees that protection of citizens' rights will be a primary objective of those handling sensitive data. Ladies and gentlemen, these are not challenges unique to the Republic of Serbia. These are challenges that are being faced by all European countries today. And we are dealing with these challenges together. We must learn from each other and move forward together on this. Any restrictions to fundamental human rights, including to the right of personal data protection, must be in accordance with the necessity and proportionality principles. Above all, we need transparency and a broad multi-stakeholder dialogue on risks that surveillance and the use of digital technology pose to citizens' rights to privacy. When discussing these important issues, all voices should be allowed to publicly express their concerns, opinions, and arguments. Commissioner Marinovic, I would like to reassure you that the mission stands ready to continue assisting all relevant stakeholders in this process, and we will closely cooperate with you and your able team. Notably, we will have opportunities to jointly raise awareness on personal data protection through our public campaign that's being planned for 2022. And I'm grateful to the government of Sweden for their generous financial support for these activities. So thank you once again to you and your team for your efforts. You're making progress. The challenges are also developing, so the faster we run, the faster the problems develop. So we have to keep running together. Thank you very much, and we will have success when we work together. Thank you very much.
Vaša ekscelencijo, zahvaljujem se na ovim lepim rečima I
thank you, Your Excellency, on your nice words, and I believe that others share my happiness about continuation of our further cooperation. Our next guest, but also our friend, taking into account how much we cooperate with institutions and persons that represent these institutions that come to speak or as participants, our next guest is Mrs. Matea Norčić-Trancer, Deputy Head of EU Delegation to the Republic of Serbia. As this is a very important institution, we are presenting Mrs. Trancer at this moment. Thank you very much. Zahvaljujem se, gospodi Luković. I'm very happy that at this moment I am here with you to participate in this important meeting that traditionally is organized by the Office of the Commissioner for observation of the International Day of Privacy. Privacy and protection of data are very much linked and connected, and they are considered as two separated rights. In European Union, they are considered as vital rights. The right to protect your own information, to know what they are and to protect them is not only the human rights, it is also the social value. Every country in the world admits privacy in one way or the other in their constitutions or in some other provisions. The protection of data refers to information, of all information that regard to a physical living person, including dates, names, address of mail, and other information that refer the final uses of different telecommunication services, including IP and contents of information. They are all considered as personal information. The notion of privacy is, has in its origin the basic value, such as freedom of speech and freedom gathering and freedom of expression. We know that the precise objectives are rational use of public data. We are living in a modern time telecommunication area, and we share information on a global level, including personal data as well. So all of us leave our digital traces when we communicate, and all that enters now with the pandemic, it becomes even more important and has influence on it. Of course, these massive gatherings and processing of personal data make us to think about our own privacy. The protection of personal data is one of the examples where European Union at the moment has global leadership. We have to stress that. So European legal framework has become a model all around the world, and it has influence on other continents and countries. Many have reformed their national laws in accordance with European standards. So that decree that I talked about, or directive on personal protection, was adopted on 2016, and the protection of personal data has become not only the right but also the legal obligation. So supervisor at the European level, it is an independent body responsible for following the application of rules in this regard. European Commission has nominated an officer that is in charge of following and applying. And also an action plan has been adopted with concrete instructions how to protect personal information. In June 2020, European Commission has followed and estimated the first 2 years, including international cooperation. So the Commission will support the ongoing process of reforms in the countries out of European Union, such as Serbia, how they protect data, and we will also work on exchange of practices, best practices. So they are fuel for digital economy, so this data has to be interchanged in the European Union and to expand further out of the European Union, and they should all be upgraded into the digital market by keeping strict standards for maximal protection of individuals and their data. This is very important for our partners all around the world and also for the countries candidates for the EU as Serbia. So consumers, citizens, enterprises have to feel safe in order to keep confidence in the unique digital data market. In order to protect all these data are not limited only to European Union. It is all around the world, and it has been showed already by a poll that has been organized lately. So many companies have supported this idea and have also made commitments how to protect the data not only on their territories but also to the countries that are not in the European Union, where the enterprises on the level of companies are connected with European Union, although countries are not related to, are not part of the European Union. So the law on protection of data, generally speaking, complies with the law on the European level, and the officer for information of public importance has pointed out in his annual report about the need of some other laws to be adapted to the European law, and it will be centralized, especially in the new law that is being prepared. As Mr. Marinovic said, the protection in the number of these companies that are cooperating with the Commissioner is increasing on a daily basis, but many of them need better capacity, and so the capacity building is one of the things that we should work on. Then there is also a cooperation agreement with Eurojust Serbia, and from 2020 March there is a person who is in charge of that, and also the European Prosecutor's Office that started in 1st of July last year. That cooperation started then. So the protection of privacy is part of 23 chapter, and in 24 as well. It is a basis for cooperation as far as justice cooperation is concerned. We have to know that upgrading of work in these areas is of crucial importance for the process of accession of Serbia to the European Union. The first important step is precisely justice system. It is not ending here. It should continue in future in order to be more efficiently adapted, and also with that in view, the amendments to the Constitution of Serbia have been adopted, and all the relevant laws should be adapted in order to comply to the European Union rules. I want to commend the work of civil sector as well. In this sector, these civil organizations have done important analysis, and we hope that they will be taken into account when future actions are defined. The cooperation with the Commissioner is indispensable in accordance with standards and application, in accordance with the reality of Serbia at this moment. At the end, delegation of European Union, we have obligation to continue our cooperation with the Commissioner, with the government, civil society, in order to resolve these important, many numerous aspects that still have to be reformed within the process of cooperation and of negotiations. And we hope that in future period we will continue with this cooperation, and that we will together fight against all temptations and challenges. Thank you. Ms. Norčić-Stancer, I thank you on your nice words and your introduction about the work of our activities and where it takes us in the process of further integration. What I have said previously, that there are persons who are friends of our House. It's not only, didn't regard Ms. Stamcer only, but the same pleasure and honor I have to announce our next speaker, Mrs. Nadia Čuk, who is Deputy Head of the Council of Europe office in Belgrade. Our cooperation has lasted for a long time, and in which the expression of importance of all privacy issues was taken account of, and so the protection of privacy, I think, is one of the most important things that we can show is raising awareness of the public, and we started with talking about raising awareness and trainings where we have rewarded by Stefano Tondo prize people who have particularly done well in this area. So this is Mrs. Čuk that will talk to us now.
Thank you very much for this kind invitation to address you today on behalf of the Council of Europe in Belgrade. The International Data Protection Day is, without any doubt, extremely important day, and as you remember, last year we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the convention, called 108, so I will use this abbreviation because of this long title. And so that means that for over 40 years this convention has shaped the protection of privacy and of data protection in Europe and beyond. Its modernized version, known as Convention 108 Plus or Protocol, will continue to do so. Yes, we strongly believe in this. The Council of Europe Convention for the Protection of Individuals with regard to automatic processing of persons' data, this is the full name of convention, is the only legally binding multilateral instrument on the protection of privacy and personal data open for accession to any country in the world. It currently already has 55 states parties on 4 continents, and another 20 countries participate in its work. It provided also the essential pillars, as it has been mentioned, for the EU work in this field, including the 2018 General Data Protection Regulation. It entered into the force in Serbia as well on 1st of January 2006, and Serbia also ratified the protocol which modernizes the convention, adjusting it to the new challenges in present circumstances. And this protocol is already signed by 40 member states and ratified by 14 of them, which illustrates the importance and relevance of this legal instrument for many countries. This groundbreaking convention has influenced numerous international, regional and national privacy and data protection laws, facilitating data flows across national frontiers and supporting respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, including human integrity and dignity. More than ever, our democratic societies, given their exponential digitalization, as well as the globalization of data processing and data flows, need to secure the protection of individuals regarding the processing of personal data. For this, we need international cooperation between data protection authorities even more, or rather, especially in this particular time of emergency. And let me thank the Commissioner for his and his team for high commitment for international cooperation. The Council of Europe is convinced that modernized convention could become the international and widely shared standard of reference with a global remit on privacy and data protection in the digital age. Such a common standard will help facilitating transborder flows of personal data while guaranteeing an appropriate level of protection and supporting better regulatory cooperation at the international level. We recall the importance of the amending protocol to secure shared legal space for the digital age to preserve the relevance of this landmark instrument for the decades to come. We are thus looking forward for other countries also to join the forces so that protocol can enter into force as soon as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, since the 80s, and that has been also mentioned by the Commissioner and other speakers, we have seen rapid technological innovation. Yet, during the last years, the most popular ones, the most popular data inventions, like social media or smartphone, did not seem to help much, or they helped, but they came with some harmful side effects, such as the creation of powerful monopolies and the pollution of the public sphere with the information disorder. This is a apparent situation that we are facing with. The emergence of artificial intelligence exposed our democracies to the influence of authoritarian regimes and ideologies and their potential malign technology experts. A recent study commissioned by the Council of Europe analyzed potential negative impact on human beings and society, which is today public, and you can have an insight in this. Discrimination, the advent of surveillance society, the weakening of human privacy, information distortion, electoral interference, digital exclusion, and potentially harmful, let's say, attention economy are just some of the concrete concerns that are being expressed and identified. In this context, the Consultative Committee of the Council of Europe issued a set of guidelines calling for the strict regulation of facial recognition technologies in order to address the risks they pose to human rights, especially the rights to privacy and the protection of personal data. There is still a realistic possibility of new era of innovation that could improve living standards and help supporting the aim of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, especially if government create a resilient, in fact, that is something that is a precondition, to create a resilient regulatory framework that helps new technologies to support the realization of fundamental rights and freedoms of this many and not of the few. This is the aim of the discussion on a future legal framework for the artificial intelligence that is in the process of preparation by the Council of Europe, and that is still discussed within the Council of Europe ad hoc committee for the artificial intelligence. We are also working on the raising awareness, as it has been mentioned, about these serious challenges. So we created the Stefano Rodotta Award. This award recognizes innovation, recognizes in fact innovative and original academic research projects in the field of data protection. This prize is in the honor of memory of Stefano Rodotta, who was an eminent Italian lawyer and politician who has championed the promotion of the right to data protection. And it will be also, right now, today, will be announced for the 2022, focusing its attention on the newest challenges for personal data protection and the possible response to this challenge. I'm sure that that will also shape the work of the Commissioner and his office in Belgrade. That is why we stand ready to continue with our support to the Commissioner and his team. We wish him a good luck, and we, of course, would like also to help you, to thank to the all audience present here online and offline for your attention. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Hugh, thank you very much for the kind words you shared with us. Now I would like to, and a great honor, to introduce our next speaker, Mrs. Susan Price, USAID Mission Director to Serbia. Mrs. Fritz will address us online, and this will remind us of the pandemic situation and points out the challenges we are facing, how to reach different target groups that are not present here in this hall. When we are talking about USAID, United States Agency for International Development is lasting part of the Office of the Commissioner. We had several activities that promoted protection of the private rights, and we need to point out the education and training of the officers with our office. As we mentioned, our cooperation with OSCE in publishing video clips, short clips, and jointly with USAID we publish several short video clips and cartoons you can find on our YouTube channel. And you can approach this online, access this online. And additionally, I need to point out that USAID helped us in raising of our visual identity, among other things, and we received our logo. You can see on our masks and our billboards, and we, as the office, have additional visual identity, and this logo symbolizes the relationship of these protected rights. Not to be too long, I want to introduce Mrs. Susan Fritz. You have the floor. Hvala, Marko.
Okay. Poštovani Povereniče Marinoviću, gospođo.
The Commissioner Marinovic, Mrs. Nosic Strancher, Ambassador Bratu, Mrs. Chuk, the respected colleagues and friends. I'm honored to join you today to mark the International Data Protection Day. Increasingly, the ways in which we are now living and working require greater reliance on technology for daily communication, transmitting personal information like health data, conducting e-businesses, and delivering essential government services. Data protection and privacy have become more important than ever. Without question, government institutions are obliged to implement the law on personal data protection, but citizens also need to understand their rights about what personal data is being collected, how that data is collected and stored, why the data is needed, and what the rights are with respect to the processing of that data. Citizens should also be informed about potential risks from the inappropriate handling and processing of their personal data. Only with that understanding can citizens exercise their rights more efficiently. USAID, through its Government Accountability Initiative, has been supporting the Commissioner's efforts to raise public awareness on personal data protection rights, including the obligation of both government and the private sector. And we applaud for their fine work. Certainly, this is no easy task. We know this because USAID also grapples with this issue in our own programs when we engage with Serbian institutions to help them develop e-governance tools for more efficient public services. We have to pay very close attention to data protection issues from the outset to ensure citizens' privacy is protected. At the same time, personal data protection is one of the most common reasons cited to deny the public right to know. The lack of understanding of the right to know and the right to personal data protection and their mutual relationship often creates the misperception that they are two opposing rights. It is simply not true that one can be exercised only at the expense of the other. It is crucial for the authorities to understand that these two rights complement each other in holding governments accountable to citizens. This is why USAID is supported by the Commissioner to publish the integrated guidebook on personal data protection and free access to information of public importance for public institutions and civil society organizations. This guide should help public authorities, to understand how to respect the right to access information without unnecessarily restricting it, but also how and when to protect personal data when necessary. We congratulate the Commissioner's team in their continued efforts to build better data protection system, ensure free access to information, and raise public awareness. It is a tough job, but someone has to do it. Thank you for doing this job. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to continue cooperating with the mission of USAID. After these introductory speeches of our guests, now we want to present our new publication of personal data protection that we publish. I have this honor to point out that since 2017, where the first deputy of the commissioner for the part that deals with the personal data protection, when its mandate finished, we didn't have the deputy for this area that protected personal data. In March of the last year, Mrs. Sanja Unkovic was appointed for this on this function. This is the first day that we have the first celebration of this kind. Then we have Sanja Unkovic as Deputy Commissioner for Information of Public Importance and Personal Data Protection.
Dear guests, dear speakers, it is a special honor for me from the position of Deputy of Commissioner to greet all of you and to thank you for responding to our call and invitation in spite of epidemics that is still ongoing to increase the importance of this very important day for us. And I also want to wish the speakers, respected speakers, who are supporting the importance of the Commissioner and this institution and Commissioner himself. It is my pleasure this year to present this publication, and up to this moment I can say that for full 11 years I've been working in the Commissioner's office on the work of protection of data, personal data, and sometimes these files that I was working on were part of this book, and that's why I'm so happy to be able to present the work of our colleagues. Before that, I would like to share an emotional story for myself, since I was wondering whether I should talk about it or not, but since I feel here that I'm among friends and people who know me, whatever can happen. When you think that something cannot happen, it does happen to me. But this time it happened to me in a positive sense, that today's day, I'm celebrating in this place. I was going to school at that time. My father was headmaster of Belgrade, and I was in this building quite often. And one time he was mayor of the town of Belgrade. My father was sitting in the first row, and I came up to this floor and starting talking. I was not afraid at all. I was imitating the big speakers of that time, and that is where I got my first applause, because it was from my father only, but it was very important for me. And this is now the second time for me to celebrate in this building, in this place, in this room, this important date. But the life arranged my life in such a way that I'm speaking in this room this time again. This is an emotional story for me. This is the second applause that I'm receiving in this building. So I will now start with presentation of this rather big book. It is our new publication that is in fact the 7th edition. It is the 7th time that we are publishing something about our work. This is the first publication that appeared after the emergency state that we had in this country, and the first from the protection of data that has our logo that we received in 2021. And it is the second from the beginning of application of the new law on protection of data. This year, we have arranged our work a little bit differently. Up to now, it was only a publication that was divided into segments of data protection, but this time it is separated by sectors, and we did it on purpose because apart from a better presentation of the situation within the data protection, we also wanted that our readers should know what are the sectors that exist in the service of protection of personal data, and this time I will mention their sector for supervision, sector for protection of individuals and transfer of data, and sector for harmonization. So this year as well, I can say that as compared to 2020 and 2019, we have a much richer practice behind us and experience, and although this pandemic situation is ongoing, I think it was most difficult for people in the supervision because I was an officer for inspections, and I know how difficult it is when you have reason to go somewhere in the field, but you cannot go there because people are working from home, and because of such situation, you just cannot do your work. But in spite of that, I think I'm not a fan of numbers, and I don't like to present work through numbers, but since this situation is as it is, that in spite of difficult situation, my colleagues have worked diligently. I hope that you will not take it as something against me if I mention several numbers regarding the subject that we worked on. I will just compare it with 2020, when we had 2,952 files, and we ended 2,770. In 2021, we have received 3,000 something, and out of that, a big number has been resolved. And the supervision sector has finalized 303 procedures, out of which some were regular, some were extra regular. We have sent to about 900 control lists to people who are handling in different institutions, and also the sector for protection of personal data and transfer of data have received also complaints in 2021. 707 opinions were delivered, edited, and about the proper utilization or proper usage and application of laws, and all this data can be found in the book. As far as evaluation of the situation in data protection is concerned, at the moment we cannot be really satisfied with the situation, because in our work we have understood that the handlers or processors and those who are obliged to follow their obligations have not understood properly and protected the rights of our citizens, who also, they themselves don't know all their rights. So our commissioner and the whole team, we are working on it, and a very big number of trainings we have held, and at the moment we are working on the new systematization in the office of the commissioner, and one of the new sectors that will be introduced is the sector for education and certification. And this sector will be in charge of analyzing the needs not only of our employees here, needs for further education, but also other subjects that have the obligation to apply our law. This year, of course, I'm not going to retell you the whole publication, but I can just want to provoke your interest to read this publication. This year we have divided it by competencies of the commissioner, so I would start with the sector of supervision, and I would give you an advice to read what the commissioner did in different situations. In the situation, for example, when some handler of private data has introduced cameras, and the processor doesn't have any problem regarding the licenses, regarding the private security, but there is no agreement between the two. So on one hand, one of the two needed details, and these details were not protected. Or for example, kindergarten has published the data of all children that are cared for in this kindergarten, with their personal numbers, with their data on their parents, and also their numbers, citizens' number, and so on. So that is what happened when someone does not fulfill his obligation in a proper way, so that this data of children, after selecting the children for the kindergarten or limiting the number, the data remain there so everybody can enter into these details. Or when someone takes a photo from the marriage certificate and then send that marriage certificate to the third party, and then it is published in some social network. Or, for example, in a prison, people who are working there are filmed, and then the video supervision is done, but it should be done, only video should be done, not other audio recordings. You will see so many other examples regarding the sector of protection of persons, and you will see many examples about the erasure of data. You have the right to ask that your data is erased from somewhere, and the processor of your personal data refuses to do it. So we had a situation when a complainer is writing a complaint to the commission asking that his data is erased because the processor, after he has gone out, has stopped working for a certain company, the processor of personal data did not want to remove his email, and there was his last name in that email, so the processor using that mail and cooperate with his business partners. So you should see how the commissioner reacted in that situation. Or when a processor says, you have the right to erase your data, but I don't have to do it because this is part of my work. So we all know that the handler should be in charge of all data, including the erasing the data. So it is a big problem. The big number of complaints is about the work of banks, because what used to happen is that banks refuse. When you ask your contract on a credit, although you have repaid your credit, you have right to see that that contract. They refuse to give it because they say that the National Bank states that you can, bank should give photocopies of the contract, but only to those clients who have active credits, what is not right. So the sector for harmonization, that is where I remember many interesting examples about estimation or evaluation of influence. So there is a legal entity who is employer here, and he wants to do the processing of personal data using software for the control of employees, remote control, in order to promote efficient control, in order to introduce silent monitoring, so that during the whole working hours, employer can follow the work through a computer of his employees, or a situation when a handler of personal data wants to introduce the entry, going into the office and going out. There's a card that records all this, but then it is recorded there into which offices one of the employees has entered, or how long he has stayed, how much time he has used for lunch, and so on. So many people were interested to know what are their rights in that situation. There were many questions regarding the legitimate interest. We have seen that it is people who are handling the data are not sure what their legitimate interest is. And there were many questions of citizens, or complaints from the citizens, asking whether the anti-corruption agency, by giving the whole data about public servants, is it considered to be over use of the mandate of persons who are handling information, or can a company engage a person if that person is already employed in some other entity? Or is there a possibility for an employer, when employing a person, can ask data from the court that there is no criminal charges, criminal charges that he asks from the court? So the diagnosis of an illness, can it be found in the data of a certain person, in his personal data in the company? Things like that. You can read here about these issues that are, I think that this publication is useful not only for public in general, but also for us who work here. And we use this when you get a situation that is similar. You can read it and know what would be the right answer. So you just behave in the same way, so that the practices are not different. This is as far as the publication is concerned, but since I'm an optimist, the sentence that I said, we are not very happy about the protection of data in the Republic of Serbia, I don't want to be pessimist. I have to also underline the important and positive examples. And when I compare the situation in 2011-12 and the time and this moment, when I compare the two situations in this span of 10 years, I can say that today one understands much better what should be done and what is the importance of protection. In 2013, 14, 15, we were protecting easier the personal data, but that's understandable because the technology did not go that far at that moment. We are talking about artificial intelligence, and our temptations are much bigger and challenges are much bigger for us to protect the data. And the level of understanding is also increasing, has increased substantially for these past 11 years. And at the end, I have also to mention something that is emotional for me. It is our strategy for 2022 up to 2030, where the members of the working groups who are here now today, I thank everybody who is present here. This is an emotional issue for me. It is very important for me. And by mentioning this, I'm making for myself this day much more important. It is an enormous step, and I thank the Ministry, the government, the Ministry of Justice, and also ourselves, we who have worked in this working working group on the strategy 2230. We have selected a very good group of people, a very good team that is working on it, and we have had different meetings. We have noticed which the problems are, we have defined the objectives, we have defined the measures, how to realize these objectives, and we continue immediately after the day of today, we are continuing with it. And what is important for us and what is defined as the first problem is precisely changes in the law of protection of privacy data. It is our aim number one. This law is much, much better than previous law, but still when you start working, you understand that there are also some shortcomings, and you have an idea how to overcome these problems that appear, taking into account that our colleague, one of my colleagues has mentioned that according to the Article 100, all sectoral laws should be adapted or harmonized with the law on protection of person, in the new law on protection of personal data. It was our obligation up to 2020, but it has not been fully fulfilled, so we will first change the law, and then with the changed law, we will change other sectoral laws. So we have big work ahead of us, but we can do it, of course. And of course, why is this strategy important? Because with the aid of this strategy, we believe that we will also help in or contribute in formulating the laws that are missing, because through video supervision, or these are the laws that are needed through biometrics, or a relationship between artificial intelligence and protection of data, digitalization, and so on. So in this positive attitude, I'm ending my speech, and I thank everybody for your attention, and I wish to everybody a happy day of this important day for us.
Thank you very much, Sanja, that you presented our publication and encouraged us how you can, and in this book we can find relationship between the law and legislative framework and practice, and what are the challenges in implementing of this law, and not to continue to speaking. The most representative opinions we have published in this publication, and you can physically take it, but you can download it from our website of the Commissioner. We are now ending this part of this gathering, and we are leaving the time for the present guests and participants if there are some questions and remarks or comments. We have obviously in the company of similar-minded people, and our speakers actually answered all the questions. And I want to thank our speakers that expressed the attitudes of their institutions. I want to thank the Commissioner and the Deputy that presented how this law looks like from our perspective of our institution. I would thank to our guests that followed us in person or online and spent some time with us to hear more about these important rights. I want to thank our interpreters and our technical support and media that followed up this event and who enabled to this idea get out of this hall and reach the public. And now I will end this gathering. I will greet you in the commission in the name of the Commission, and I want to wish you a happy work, and I will wish you also for the pandemic to end, and for us to get rid of the masks. And I want to invite everybody for the cocktail. I just want to thank Marco as well, if I want to add, and we wish you have a good time in the